Hi, yeah. I'm stuck on your elevator at the Ellis Garage on floor 7.
One moment.
So as you've seen in the intro, today's B-roll filming came with its own adventure that I will talk about later on in the video. First and foremost, Happy New Year. Hope you guys had a fantastic holiday season and New Year. Hope you guys stayed safe and healthy and warm. It's been absolutely frigid here in Michigan. But Emily and I had a fantastic holiday season. We spent time with friends and family, and then we took a little mini trip out to Chicago just before the new year. And I made a small body of work out there, did some video out there actually, surprisingly. And I hope to bring that stuff to you guys soon. But going into 2022, I've been thinking about what type of videos I could bring to the channel. Videos that I would be excited to make, that would help me make them maybe a little bit more frequently. And I was thinking about the last video I put up months back where I just sat down and shared stories about photography. Mainly in that video, stories of how photography impacted or has been a thread throughout Emily and my relationship. I'll link to that up top here. And on top of the process and theory episodes, I thought this would be based off of you guys' response to that video. This could be a great little mini series of sharing stories about the photographic process, stories about different images, both successes and failures. We're gonna have a little bit of both today. And just diving into some of the stories that I have to share. And then I hope to hear you guys' stories in the comments, on Instagram, and kind of in response to these types of videos. So our episode today has two parts. Part 1 is about the story of the photo. Part 2 is about the story of the B-roll. And we will get to that later. So jumping into part 1, this is the photo I want to talk about. This is called Birds in Flight. I shot this in 2016. So back then I was shooting almost entirely with this little camera here. This is a Minolta AFS-V that I found for $2 at a thrift store back in the day. And in 2016, I was making a majority of my work with this guy. It has a 35mm 2.8 lens, and you could set it all the way up to 1000 ISO, which at the time, 2016 was really my year for pushing film. I've pushed film ever since, but that was the first year that I was really getting into it. So having 1000 ISO, I could push all the way up to 1600, and it was just a blast. This photo and the other photos that you will see in this episode were shot on Delta 100 that I was trying and experimenting pushing to 400. Most of which did not work, but the one photo, Birds in Flight, did work. And you will see the other photos around that photo later on in the episode. So also in 2016, if you remember back at the beginning of the channel, I kind of had a mantra of you want to get out there and shoot as much as possible. You want to do it even if you don't feel like it. You need to show up and practice every day. And I think there's still merit to that for individuals. But I would say that my personal experience and my personal movement with photography has changed drastically. And I actually enjoy the change, and I'll talk about that in a process and theory episode in the future. But I digress, and I want to jump back into this story. So, mid to late November of 2016, I remember the day very vividly. It was gloomy and cold and just not enjoyable. If you know anything about the Midwest, we have summer all through, or we have sun all throughout the summer, and then October hits and the sun goes away, and we have overcast from October to like April or May, and then we go into a state of seasonal depression and we shut down and we lose all energy, and it's just not fun. I know some of you guys live in overcast seasons all year round, and I feel for you, but we get blasted with the sun and then we crash when the sun goes away. But anyway, days like today give us a little bit of hope because the sun poked out for a bit. This day was much like today, to where it started off overcast and then finished sunny. And I jumped downtown, walking around for about 45 minutes to an hour, and didn't shoot an entire frame. Like I said, it was cold, nobody was happy, and nobody was out in the city, so there wasn't street photography, there wasn't shadows, there wasn't the type of things that kind of get my creative juices going. I was about to call it a day, when all of a sudden I noticed the birds that were hovering around the top of a parking garage, and I thought, well, I'll at least get some shots of birds, which, if you follow my work, you know I'm a fan of. So I jump in the elevator, which worked that day, get to the top of the elevator shaft, and at the top of that shaft is the building structure that you were looking at the start of the video. And the birds were just perched on the top of the structure. So I'm sitting there, and I fired off 2 shots at the beginning of the roll, which I'll show you here, where they're just kind of sitting there. 1 or 2 birds were flying off. But I was just waiting for them to move. I was just sitting here composed, and I was actually kind of squawking at them, trying to get them to move. So caw, caw kind of thing. And they weren't moving. They were cawing back at me and I think laughing at me. And I waited for about 5 to 8 minutes before I just got fed up. So I frame up, pull the camera up to my eye, and I jump up and put my feet down and make just this giant ruckus. And sure enough, they all fly away, and the shot happens right there. Birds in flight happen in that moment. It was exactly as I seen it in my mind. And then I'm so like adrenaline, right? Because 1, I'm just jumping up and down in the cold. But 2, the birds are flying around. So I just start running after the birds down across the way of the parking garage. So I'm at the top of the parking garage. There's another elevator shaft on the other corner. And I'm just running back and forth, shooting up in the air, just kind of pointing my camera, running and shooting as I'm going. And the birds land on the other side of the parking garage, kind of same type of composition, different type of lighting. And I shoot a couple images there, nothing crazy, nothing good. And then I jump and stomp and scare them off again and start chasing them back over to the other side. About 10 minutes goes by, maybe 15. And I'm just running back and forth, chasing these birds down, waving my hands in the air, calling at them, shooting photos, looking like an absolute madman, I'm sure, which comes into the story. I get done. The birds fly off to what's called the Amway Grand, land on that roof. And I go, well, they're gone, so I'm going to jump in the elevator and come back down. Well, at the bottom of the elevator, when you get to the ground floor, when you come out and turn left, the office for the security personnel is right across from the elevator. And there's 2 security guards in there looking at me, just laughing at me. And I notice on the screen behind them that all their cameras were focused on the roof, which they cannot see the birds that I am chasing. So all they see on the roof is this guy who walked to the parking garage in the first place. So I have no vehicle there. And I'm just running back and forth on the roof, waving my camera, stomping and throwing my hands in the air, looking like an absolute crazy person. And they're looking at me like, are you having an emotional breakdown? Or have you lost your mind? Do you need help? And I'm just like kind of waving at them, smiling, and dart out and take off. And it's just so funny because they were probably watching me for the whole 10 minutes, right? 10 minutes of them watching me run around looking like a fool. The 5 to 10 seconds of making eye contact and just having a really strange moment with them as they're just kind of looking at me wondering, okay, what next? And I move on, only to turn out that this is the photo that launched my photography career. This is the photo that showed up and actually started making waves within the community and started getting me conversations with those who I admired. This was a big stepping stone for me. The photo started selling. I got exhibitions because of it. I sold the photo at exhibitions. I made a fair amount from a very large print that I did of it for what we call Art Prize here in town. It's a big art competition. 3.5 feet by 5 feet on the wall of Ferris Coffee, which is no longer there, unfortunately. But sold for a very good amount. And anyway, all that to say, I looked like a fool for about 15 minutes. I felt like a fool for about 15 minutes. But the foolishness for 15 minutes has lasted me with a photo that has done so much for my artistic career and has done so much of opening up conversations with other artists and actually started shifting the way that I thought. I was looking at this roll of film, just thinking about how much I was kind of spraying and praying with film. It started really second guessing myself on the way that I was approaching photography, while at the same time being shored up and encouraged that, man, I can make a good photo. I can make something that's solid, that I'm proud of, that I want to put out there in front of the world. And it started shifting my thought process to being more intentional with my shooting. All that to say, it only takes one photo to really make some moves within your artistic career. Now, do I think that that's the most amazing photo on the face of the planet? No, but I know what it did for my walk as an artist, my journey as a photographer, and my confidence as a creative individual. And I'm very grateful for that photo. Now, part 2, the B-roll today. Emily and I jumped into the car this morning. We went out and got some breakfast in order to go down to the parking garage and get the B-roll. Lo and behold, the birds were actually up there. I had no clue that there was going to be the birds up there today, and that the lighting conditions would be almost exactly the same apart from the clouds in the sky. And it was just amazing to get up there and have it feel so much like the actual day that I was photographing. So sure enough, I chased them from one side to the other to get the B-roll, and it was just a blast, kind of revisiting an old topic, revisiting an old photo, and kind of having that whole nostalgia come back up. Then I get into the elevator to go down and grab the B-roll for the security office when all of a sudden, floor 7, the door shuts and it's trying to just open up, and it's making the noise that you heard in the video, and it's not going anywhere. So called the lady, couldn't hear a word that the lady was saying over the speaker because it was like broken. But sure enough, they had somebody come out. They were on their way out. I did hear enough to hear that it was going to be 25 minutes before they showed up. So I had 25 minutes in the elevator. We got it open actually just before the elevator guy got there. But I just sat in the elevator for a little bit. Emily sat outside the elevator and kept me company until the elevator just kind of all of a sudden worked. And the door shut on the outside, the one opened back up on the inside, and it was a Christmas miracle all over again. I don't know. But it was an interesting experience, to say the least, and made for a nice little 25-30 minute adventure for Emily and I. To be able to see the birds again, to be able to get stuck in an elevator, and to be able to have just something to look back on, and we'll tell our grandkids about it someday, I'm sure. I'm curious to hear if you guys have any photos like that. Photos that either one, people were laughing at you, but you walked away with just a strong image that you're proud of. Or 2, a photo that really broke you into a whole new scene within a community or within your artistic career or whatnot. I would love to hear your stories. I would love to see the photos. Send them over to me on Instagram at NickExposed, and then share the stories down in the comments down below. Also, I want to hear, have you guys ever been stuck in an elevator, and what was that like for you? I'd just love to hear stories like that to be able to relate with people in the community. Anyways, I will see you guys in the next episode whenever that comes out. And until then, for nostalgia's sake, go and push yourselves 2 stops. Peace.